Greg, what's up, man? Welcome to Dad Edge.
How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing good, man. You got like this sort of like broadcasty, really cool voice. Anybody ever told you that?
I should try out broadcasting. That sounds like a good idea. That sounds like a fun idea.
Yeah, you should. I know a guy who could maybe get you in. So, but well, man, it's good to meet you. It's good to have you on. Obviously, been watching your story for a long time, and obviously, you're a father of three. I'm a father of four boys, and really been watching your journey over the past year. So, I know one of the things we're gonna be talking about is TJ, and my gosh, man, like I can't even imagine, man, like just the uncertainty and the stress and the things that, have just been on your mind and heart over the past, several years. But I know we're going to get to that. But where I'd really like to start is like how you grew up, man, what your relationship with your own dad was like.
Yeah. My upbringing was again, in our world, it was very normal. Mom and a dad. My dad was a local high school football coach for 40 years. He coached at the school. I had two brothers, so all boys, like you raising all boys. My mom and dad raised all boys who all went off to play, at least college football, if not beyond. And then, my dad was a high school football coach and a PE teacher. He eventually became like a vice principal administrator role during the end of his education career. My mom was also a school teacher, also a coach when she was younger before she had the kids. And then she just was a teacher and a mom. But so they both worked in education their entire lives. And we grew up around locker rooms and camps and, summer vacation for me and my older brother. We were close in age, and I had a younger brother who was 10 years younger than us. So me and my older brother kind of growing up together, summer vacation for us was going with my dad and his high school team to sleepaway camp for a week and sleeping on the floor in dorms and getting up early and going to practice with high school kids. From the time we were in elementary, middle school, that's what we did. That was our life. It revolved around the school. It revolved around sports, our own teams, my dad's teams. And, obviously then we got old enough that we all eventually went to that school and played for my dad, and he was our high school coach. And we went through that whole situation. So our upbringing was very basic. It was very normal. We had a lot of people in our lives that loved us. We had a lot of people in our lives that pushed us and encouraged us to really, achieve your greatness, your best possible scenario that you're capable of. And there wasn't a lot of tolerating anything less than that. In our house, things were expected to be done a certain way, and that's what we did. So it was, but yeah, it was awesome. But that's, every memory I have as a kid and with my family and stuff, it somehow revolved around sports and our family, and most of our family and sports always kind of seem to overlap.
Yeah. I've heard you actually, it was on Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s podcast. I heard you talk about like growing up, your mom and dad, I mean, obviously very loving family, very supportive, but there was also, there was very little fluff. If, it's not like the expectations were high. Right. And, yeah. The performance was high. Right. And that's the way you guys lived, looking back on your childhood, spending so much time at camps and around sports. And was there ever a part of you that felt like, man, I really wish my life was a bit different, maybe not as demanding when it came to sports? Or was it like, hey man, like wouldn't trade this for the world. This is exactly what I want to do.
Yeah. I've said this before, on my own pod and other people's pods who have asked, there wasn't a day that my dad had to beg us and drag us out of the house to go to a practice or go to a camp or go to a workout. There wasn't a day. I mean, was there some days that we were probably harder to wake up and 6 o'clock in the morning to go run the track with his high school kids or whatever? Like, of course, every young kid, I deal with my own kids. We're like, it's 8 o'clock. I'm like, we got to go to practice. And you're like ripping them out of bed. But once we were like up and going there, we loved it. Like it was all we knew. It was all we wanted to do. If we weren't with our teams or at my dad's team's practice or whatever it was, we were playing in the backyard. We were playing one-on-one lacrosse off the brick wall. We were playing one-on-one basketball. We were just, this is all we did. We didn't do a lot of fishing. We didn't do a lot of backpacking and hiking and camping. Our time with our dad was sports. Our time with my mom was her, supporting us. And, she was the ultimate cheerleader. And if my dad was, hard on us, then she would be the balance and be a little more of like the tender mother who, you played great. And we're like, we didn't play great. Dad said we sucked. But
Yeah.
So it worked. That was just all we knew. And I look back on it and wouldn't trade I wouldn't trade it for anything. The lessons that I learned early on, especially through my sports experience, are lessons that I still carry with me and now apply to my own parenting and to my career as a player. When I was 35 years old, I was still thinking back to lessons that were instilled in me when I was 15, just trying to make the varsity football team. The lessons don't change. The application changes as you age and as you get into different situations and circumstances. But those core lessons of life, those core lessons of hard work and accountability and perseverance and, all those cliche words, it's true. That's the model of life, right? The ups and downs and how you kind of navigate it. But it doesn't change based on your age. So I carried a lot of that forward with me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you started talking about lessons because, looking back and, like you have a dad, right? And there's that relationship you have with your dad, but then dad also becomes coach, right? And the beautiful thing about sports is that sports will teach us life lessons, but our dads will also teach us life lessons. But yeah, as you look back, what are one or two like life lessons that not only did you learn from sports, but you did learn from your dad that you harness those and you absolutely love them and use them today?
I think the biggest thing that I learned, through my experience of not only my dad being my dad, but then also being so involved in our upbringing around sports and obviously went on to be, my career, was like everything was always from a place of love. Like even when he was the hardest on us and even when he was the most critical and even when he was demanding and pushing, not only us, but all the other kids who were on the team, he coached us like he coached everybody else. Which was hard and demanding and tough, but there was always a sense of love, right? Like you always knew the core of why he was being critical of you is because he saw more from you. He believed in you more than you believed in yourself, right? I think that's the point that so many people miss is the reality in sports is the harder a coach coaches you, the more they see in you. Once a coach gives up coaching you or a parent gives up parenting you, they don't see any hope. They don't see any, it's not worth their time and investment to invest in you because you're not, whether you're capable of doing it or you're not willing to do it, whatever the situation is. So that was my dad. He pushed all of his kids to the limit that he knew they were capable of. And 99% of the time they reached that limit that they never dreamed of. And that's why when kids look back and they went back to his program 30 years later for alumni dinners or, whatever it was, they would go back and just say like what an impact he had on their lives, what an impact this program of playing for him in this high school had on their lives and how they've carried it now, their parents and grandparents and the way they live their, the way they hold their job, the way they interact with their boss and colleagues. I look back and feel the exact same way. I mean, does it mean that at times it wasn't hard? Yeah, well, yeah, it was hard, but life is hard. We were getting prepared for reality. This wasn't all roses and unicorns. And, if you're not feeling good today, don't worry about it. Like, no, that's not the real world. And we learned that at an early age. And I'm thankful for it. And he lives 5 minutes down the road from me. And we coach my kids' football team together and we drive each other crazy and we fight and we argue, but he's the best coach I've ever had. If you wanted someone to build a program the right way with the culture, the identity, accountability, all those things that make up great culture, he would be the guy I'd pick to do it.
Man, that's, obviously not every son can say that, and, if you want my opinion, I think even parents today, we've got helicopter parents, right? But we also have parents that are so freaking soft on their kids. And it's almost like they don't want to ruffle the feathers of like a fluffy unicorn, right? And I've heard you talk about this on other podcasts that it's like, a lot of parents will be like, oh, you did great. And, the kids didn't necessarily do great. And even the kids know that they didn't do great. And, I think there's a way that we can coach our youth, right? We've had actually several experts come on the podcast and talk about youth athletics, right? And ways that parents will absolutely like just decimate them, right? And burn them out and just be so overbearing. And yet on the flip side, on the other extreme, there's parents that are so soft and they don't push. But what do you think is the balance between the two that's effective?
It's funny. A doctor that we had on our pod, Dr. Michael Gervais, he called it a Zamboni parent, which I thought was such a great way, helicopter. We've all heard that term. but the Zamboni point where like they're out in front and they're just smoothing the ice. Every situation's controlled. Every teacher they pick, every team they pick, not based on anything other than, is Johnny going to play shortstop? Is Johnny going to have a coach that he can relate to? Is this coach going to treat him this way or this way? Like, and they hand pick every scenario, and then their kid just makes their way through life. And at some point that is no longer sustainable and the real world hits them in the face. I want my kids to be hit in the face with the real world at 10.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them to wait till they're 18 and they're 19 and they're in college or whatever it is, and they face their first adversity in the real world or on a sports team or on a game or whatever it is, and they have no idea how to handle it. Yep. They've never been put in pressure situations. They've never dealt with failure. They've never had a coach hold them accountable. They've never been disciplined. And all of a sudden now you're asking a kid to do it who's 18, 19, he's high school / college. And those are real world problems now. He's not coming home to sleep in bed with mom and let's talk about it. He's not 10. He's an adult. Yep. He doesn't know how to make adult decisions. He doesn't know how to deal with adult consequences. So to answer your question, I feel like there is a balance, right? I feel like not everything can be 1,000% negative and critical, because there is an idea of building up kids' confidence, right? Even if it's the truth, there is an element the adults have a responsibility to the tone and delivery in which you deliver that news. We all could probably be better at. And I'm at the top. I put my hand up. I'm probably on the top of the list at times. But then when you take a step back and you say, okay, there is the responsibility of the adult, the coach, the parent, whoever it is, to be truthful. But then there is also the responsibility of, after truth, needs to be followed up with support and love. Hey, this wasn't good enough because of X, Y, and Z. I'm here to support you. What's our plan to improve? I will stand next to you forever to help you improve if you want to. Right now, they know that you're coming from a place of not just being hard on them for the sake of being hard on them. You're hard on them for the sake of loving them and believing in them, and not only saying you need to go do this, you need to go do that, and I will come do it with you. I will help you move forward. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I have this saying with my kids all the time: not everything's okay. It's just not. If everything's okay, nothing's okay.
Yep.
If I say good job to you on every at bat or on every play of the game, then how do you have any idea what you really did good versus not good? Mm-hmm. When I tell a kid great job, they know it was a great job, because not everything's a great job. When you strike out, it's not like, hey, good job, good swing. No, I don't say you suck. I'm not going to sit here and say that was an awesome at bat. Like, no, like, we need to get better. We're going to do it. I'm not going to condemn you for it. But
right
now, when you all of a sudden next time you get up there and you have a truly great at bat, and you hit a ball off the wall, that's a great at bat, right? Like, we need to differentiate between the expectations of reality. And I believe in that. And not everyone does. And listen, I spend a lot of time coaching youth teams. There's a lot of families here in Charlotte that probably don't like me and don't like my approach. But the families who get it and the families who want their kids on my team, they know their kid's going to get loved. He's going to get supported. He's going to be held accountable. And at the end of the day, he's going to improve personally and at whatever particular sport this is, which to me is secondary. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to sit there and hold your kid's hand and tell them along the way and make everything so calm and so easy and controlled and never put them in hard situations and never I'm not your guy for that. If you want that, then you need to find a different team.
I think so. First of all, thanks for sharing what you did, because the example that you gave was so spot on. You know, it's around, hey, I'm not going to congratulate you for a strikeout, but I'm also not going to tell you at 8 years old that you suck.
No,
right?
God, no.
Right. But it's like, I love the fact that you point out, hey, here's some of the things that we can improve upon. And man, I'm here to support you. Like, let's learn this maybe together. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. Like, let's learn together versus, you know, we've had other professional athletes on the podcast, and I can't even tell you how many times I've heard, you know, athletes at whatever level they're playing at be like, I used to dread being in the back seat of the car after games for the top. Real. You know what I mean?
That's real.
Yeah. So it's like, that's a really good balance, you know, to be able to coach the kids, also give them some tough love, but also be like, yo, hey man, like or girl, right? It's like, I'm here for you. Right. We'll work on this together. Right. We'll support each other.
And listen, I am guilty of, is there car rides I've had with my kids that I probably should? Yes. Yeah. Right. I'm not sitting here saying I'm like this high almighty guy who does everything the right way. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I've handled situations wrong in the past, and I've tried not to handle them the same way again, moving forward. Right. That's life. Just try not to do stupid stuff again. We're all going to do it wrong, but don't do it wrong repeatedly. Right. Yeah. So I'm the first. I'm not sitting here preaching to the choir here, telling everybody that like just do it my way, because I've handled things the wrong way. But just in my experience of growing up in this world and now parenting and coaching in this world, there is a balance, right? There is a balance. I coach my youngest son's 9-year-old team, and it's baseball, summer baseball, and they're good. They're not amazing. They're not by any means bad. They're good. They're solid. We're getting better, but they're 9. And I say to the kids all the time, who's ever been yelled at for striking out? Who's ever been yelled at because the ball went between their legs? Who's been yelled at because you didn't hustle through first base? Who's been yelled at because after you struck out, you threw your helmet and the next inning I benched you and you sat on the bench? Right. And we go through it. And my point of illustrating that, again, it's a dramatic way of explaining it to 9-year-olds is right. We're not punishing you for your performance, but we are going to hold you accountable for your actions, your attitude. Are you a good teammate? Are you trying to do it the right way? If you're trying to do it the way you're being coached and you just keep failing, we will continue to coach you indefinitely. Once you stop doing it the way you're being told to do it, and now you continue to fail, that's where as a coach you go, how much more time am I going to do this? Right? Like I've given this kid and listen, my kids are doing the same thing. So like that's our model of approaching coaching our teams. And to me, that's fair. This is not the NFL. This is not college football where it's like only thing that matters is production. Only thing that matters is results. No, like to me, youth sports is the journey. Is there improvement? Is a kid willing to improve? He doesn't need to be an MLB all-star today, but is he willing to listen and focus and be held accountable and not go into a shell when he's instructed to do things maybe differently to hopefully have a better outcome? To me, that's the core of youth sports. And we try our best to kind of, straddle that line.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I love how real you are about it, because any guy or any person who says, yeah, I execute this flawlessly, you're either A, not aware, or 2, send us the email because we all need that. Like,
trust me, I'm not that guy. I make no mistakes. I am not that guy.
Yeah.
But I try.
Yeah.
I try because I truly love working with the kids, not only my kids, but I like truly look forward to going to the ball fields or to practice or the gym, whatever the sport is. And like, I truly enjoy working with kids who want to be there and with families who want their kid to be coached. So many families nowadays take coaching their kid as an insult instead of a compliment. And I think to your earlier point about how people want to just soften everything up, is they feel like they take it personal that when their kids coached or corrected or held accountable for his attitude, whatever, that it's like a reflection on them. And meanwhile, I want my kid to be coached. Because when you coach my kid, I say, you see he can be better. You believe in him, help him get better. Like, I want my kids to be coached. But it's so often I find it's the opposite. Like, everyone sits on pins and needles because you're telling their kid he's doing something wrong, right? He needs to, whatever it is. And that to me that just drives me crazy.
I agree. I think here's my humble opinion, and I'd love to get your take on this. And then I would love to move on to like marriage with Kara and obviously TJ. But I honestly, I've got 4 boys, 16, 14, 8, and 6. And one thing I've learned, my own father has been in youth hockey for 40 years. He's been a ref, he's been a coach, he's president of junior hockey. And one thing he always talks about is youth athleticism, right? And parents and the boundaries of parents and coaches, right? So when I am in the seats, I'm a spectator. I don't heckle from the stands. I don't coach from the stands. I actually, when my kids are playing, I'll clap but I don't yell anything, and I'm stoic, right? And I watch. And I think it's a big miss if parents think that it's the right thing to do to scream and yell and coach from the stands, because the way I look at it is, hey, if I want to be the coach, which I've been the coach for my kids' teams, I'll go coach. I'm not going to coach you from the stands, right? And in my mind, the coach has the credibility. He has the final say, right? So if my kid is being coached, if my kid comes up to me and he's like, Dad, what do you think? What did your coach say?
100%.
What did he tell you? Right. That's the person you need to be listening to. Now, granted, like we'll work on, fun things and skills and that kind of thing.
Of course.
But
on your own time.
Yeah. But what advice do you have for parents out there, especially the ones, cause like, dude, like right now, my 6-year-old's playing soccer. It's learn to play, man. Right. It's learn to play. There are dads who are heckling their kids. These kids they don't even know the skills yet. They're learning how to dribble, and then they scrimmage after their little, drills. And dude, these parents like fly off the bench, like trying to like coach. And I'm like, man, you just need to chill. Right. Yeah. So what advice do you have for parents?
First off, I find myself with my 2 boys, I'm more involved coaching their teams in this time of year because they're playing baseball. We've just always coached their teams. It was my off season while I was playing. So we would make up for all like lost time in the fall and the winter during my NFL season. When I wasn't around, I wasn't at their games all the time. I was missing practice. So from the time they were little and started T-ball, spring, summer was my time at home, and I was always around and could be at practice. So I always started coaching T-ball from the time they were 5, right? So baseball has become kind of our thing that I'm the most involved in up until this point. Now that I'm retired, it's different, but that's just the way it's been the last 5-6 years. So I find myself with the boys, I am not always the head coach, but I'm always involved, right? I'm at practices, I'm helping run practices. So when the games come around, I am a little more present and do have the ability to instruct, to coach, to give my points of view. I'm not doing it from the stands. I'm doing it from either the dugout or along the foul line or whatever, but I'm more involved in the game. But then at my daughter's games, I don't coach her soccer games. I don't know anything about soccer. I tell her all the time, like, I will be there to support you. If you want to practice in the backyard, I will dribble with you, kick you. I don't know it, but I will look at what your coaches are telling you to do at practice, and we can bring some of that home, and I will help you. When I go sit in her games, I set a little chair up on the sideline. The only time I will interact with her or say anything out loud to her is if I feel she's not giving good effort. That is my number one rule. I tell her, her name is Talbot. I say, Talbot, you can swing and miss. You can get the ball stolen from you 50 times and you will not hear a word. But if you don't turn around and sprint and get back and chase the ball and give good effort and good body language, I'm going to say something. That is the stuff to me at this age that is not dependent on talent. That is not dependent on coaching. That is not dependent on anything other than you owe it to your teammates to always give your best effort. So that is my only time I will go out there. The rest of it, that's up to the coaches. I don't know enough about the game to really give much input, but I will hold my kid accountable if they're jogging around. So to your point, I think where it gets a little dicey is what drives me crazy is as the coaches, right? You're at every practice. You're investing all the time. You're sitting up at night thinking, all right, what's the best way to get Johnny involved and Sally involved? And how do we make sure everyone plays, but we also feel the competitive, right? You're spending all of this time in the best interest of all the kids, not just your kid, trying to put a good product on the field, trying to have the kids have individual growth and development. And I personally feel like all of that's my responsibility. So you harbor all of that in your shoulders. And then all of a sudden you go to the games and the people who haven't been to practice, they're not the ones giving their time. And then they all sit in the bleachers or they sit in the stands where they are, and they have all the answers, right? They second guess everything. We should have done this. Why didn't you do that? So to your earlier point, my philosophy is always, then you can come coach the team and I will go sit in the bleachers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's where I get frustrated. It's like, if you could do it, then by all means, on a Wednesday night, I have other things that I could do other than stand in the 95 degrees and for 2.5 hours coach all your kids. If you guys want to do it, by all means, but don't take a back seat all week But then come game day, you're going to sit there and you're going to find fault with coaching decisions, find fault with strategy. He should have pitched. He should have hit. She should play striker. She should play point guard. Like, I have no patience for that. So I completely agree with you that the coach is the coach. If you don't think the coach is good after the season, there's 7,000 teams you can go play for. If you don't think the coach is treating your kid right, if you don't think the coach does a good job, he doesn't know what he's talking about, then go play on a different team. It's very simple in today's youth sports world. There's 1,000 options for every kid in every town in America. That's true. How I feel.
You know, I think that is a perfect balance, right? I don't necessarily think, I think we should coach our kids on their effort, right? On their, man, especially their attitude, right? I mean, like, cause there are some kids out there, right? I mean, there are adults too, right? And sometimes the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but like there, you have to bring that attitude, right? You've got to be confident. You know, you mentioned body language, humility, also motivation, all these things that are so important. And I do think parents should help with those things by far. I want to switch gears a little bit to you being a family man. And obviously, you know, you were so open and transparent with everything that happened with TJ, but you know, take us to the moment where you first found out about TJ's heart condition.
Yeah. So shortly after, so my wife and I had, we were living in Chicago and we had our first son, my oldest, Tate. So he was born in June of 2011 and I got traded to Carolina in like July. So he was like 6 weeks old. So we moved to Charlotte. I'm playing for the Panthers. We finish up our first season. So now this is like off season, March, give or take, of 2012. And we find out Kara's pregnant now, and she's pregnant with twins. So we're like, whoa, that happens fast, right? Like we had at the time he's less than a year old, 8, 9, 10 months old, whatever he was. And so we come back to Charlotte and we're living here in the off season and we go for a checkup, like an anatomy scan where we think we're going to find out the genders of the babies. And at that ultrasound, the tech recognized that there was something wrong with one of the babies. It turned out to be TJ. And she sent us to a cardiology center here in Charlotte. And he was diagnosed in utero, they call it, with a very serious congenital heart defect called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And in essence, he was born with only the right side of his heart being functional. He did not have a left ventricle. So if left undetected or left untreated, it's 100% fatal. You don't pump oxygenated blood throughout your body. You just pump blue blood and it's, or red blood. I might have had that wrong. No, yeah, blue blood. Yeah. And that's it. So that was really our first kind of slap in the face of reality. Like, hey, we got a fight on our hands. He wasn't going to be born for another 4 or 5 months, 3 or 4 months, maybe. He wasn't born until October. So we had, the whole summer and into fall that we had to kind of prepare ourselves mentally and ready all of our stuff for what was going to be a road that we weren't sure how long it was going to be. We didn't know how hard it was going to be. But we knew it was coming, whether we liked it or not. And that was a huge challenge for us. I mean, that took a lot of soul searching and a lot of, you use that phrase, getting your mind right. Like, you better get your mind right because you're in for a fight. And we owe it to our kid to give him every chance he can to have as good a quality of life as possible. So that was kind of that was the moment where it all started.
Wow. So obviously something like this, it's a shotgun blast to the face, to the heart, right? And to a family. But how did this impact you and Kara as far as like your relationship? And the reason I ask is because diving into your story, like I said, we have 4 boys. I've been married to my wife, Jessica, it'll be 20 years next year. And I just think about, these little things that of course every family deals with, these challenges and that kind of thing. But something like that could really, it challenges a couple, right? Emotionally, physically. And here, let's put this through a man's perspective. I'm putting myself in your shoes and I'm thinking to myself, man, I need to support, my oldest. I need to support my wife. And I'm also just trying to get through this myself. Right. So it's like literally balancing all those things. But, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think balance is the word that you hit. I think, the struggles that we went through obviously were multifaceted, as you just described. The situation that we had at play was obviously Kara and I, we had met each other in college. So that was 2004. We met in 2003. We started, dating in 2004. So we had been together for a long time. And I would say through all of this, our marriage got better. Like, I think we got more appreciative of each other. I think we got more dependent on one another. And when one was having a good day, the other one would kind of internalize it and be like, or not having a good day, the other one would be like, all right, I gotta hold. I can also have a bad day. And we would kind of take turns, right? And be there as the kind of the yin and the yang to offset each other, as we went through this emotional roller coaster of processing this and, your individual, kind of each person kind of doing it, whatever best fits them. So that was first and foremost, is like, we made a conscious effort. Like, we're like, this is only going to go as well as you and I are. Like, if you and I start getting at each other and you and I are fighting in the middle of the night and you and I are on different pages on what's best plan and what's best, then all of our kids they're going to struggle as a result, right? It's going to be negative. It's going to be a negative impact on them. So like, we need to keep our stuff in line, and it doesn't mean we have to be perfect. It doesn't mean we can never disagree or have our bad days or whatnot, because that's going to happen. But like, at the end of the day, we've got to make sure we're aligned on how we're going to move forward. So that was a conscious conversation and a conscious effort every single day to kind of complement one another, to be able to kind of do this as a united force. And then the weird dynamic that we had going on is the twins were born during the season, right? So I was in the middle of the season, October of 2012, right? I'm playing, I'm gone a lot, traveling for games and all that. And then we had a 15-month-old at home. And then when the twins were born, 2 days later, we brought my daughter home. So we had my daughter and our toddler home. We had TJ in the hospital. And then I was in the season, right? So there was 3 hats we had to wear. We had to be spouses, right? We had to support one another and complement each other to make our household run. We needed to be parents, but we needed to be very different parents, right? We needed to be hands-on, normal, quote unquote, normal parents at home with the newborn and a toddler who needed mom and needed dad and needed love and attention and care and all that. And then we had a son in the hospital that we couldn't really do anything for. He was, for the first, while after his open heart surgery, he was sedated and we couldn't hold him. We couldn't carry him. We couldn't feed him. He just laid in bed with tubes coming all out of him. But we also felt this incredible urge that we needed to be there by his bedside to get him through it. Now, he had no idea whether we were there or not, but we knew it, right? So you're being pulled in all these different directions. And then, oh yeah, like, you have to go play and make a living and earn a career. And you have accountability and responsibility to your teammates and to these coaches and to these fans to go out, and you're expected to perform, and nobody gives a shit what you're going through at home. I mean, they do, but they don't. They expect you to do what you're getting paid to do. So that constant tug and pull was hard, and we had no playbook for it. We took it a day at a time and made the best decisions with the information we had in the moment. And sometimes they were right, and sometimes they were wrong. And we tried to apply the same reasoning the next day and just go from there.
Man, can I share a story with you that's personal?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, I really relate to this, and I want to ask you a question around men are fixers, right? Husbands are fixers. We want to take control of situations. We want to find a solution. And when we're faced with something that we have zero control over, it's very humbling. And sometimes we don't know what to do. I found myself in that situation back in 2014. We have 4 boys. We actually have 5. My wife and I were pregnant. We found out at 12 weeks that my son had a condition called trisomy 13, which is basically, long story short, his organs were not going to be functional. Usually babies who are even born with trisomy 13, they only live a few days and then they pass. So we found that out 12 weeks in. And facing that, my wife and I were even like, do we do we terminate this pregnancy? You know, we're both really deep in our faith and we're Catholic. And so long story short, we decided to keep him. We're like, you know, this boy was conceived out of love, and it doesn't matter if he's going to be here for, you know, an hour or 2 days. He's going to experience love, and we're going to be with him for however long we have. And I remember as a man, right, as a husband, as a provider, as a protector, I felt freaking helpless, man. Like, so helpless. And it was like, why can't, like, there's nothing I can do to fix this. There's nothing I can, like, all I can do is support. And I found myself in that situation a lot where I was like, I need to support her. I need to support my other boys. Like, they're going through this too. And that was hard, man, just being that man. And you're like, I've got no control. And my question for you is, how did you deal with that? Like, it's like, man, I just have no control over this.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I mean, it's heartbreaking to hear you tell that story. And I commend you for being able to tell it, because, you know, I sit here being able to tell my son's story, which up until this point, it's a little bit of a happier ending, right? It's more of a, you know, long journey that now I can, you know, but to tell a story where the ending is kind of finite and realized and kind of inevitable, but and deal with heartbreak and sadness. Again, whether you have that child for an hour or a day or 80 years, there's nothing, you know, the love you had for your child at 15 years is no greater than it was for the love of your child the moment they were born, right? It didn't grow. It starts in the moment you see them. So it's heartbreaking to hear. And I'm sorry that your family, all of you and your wife and your other boys had to go through that. You know, no parent should ever have to lose a child, right? It seems like that should be like the law of the land. But unfortunately, the reality of life is it's often hard. So to answer your question, I completely relate to, you know, your story. I completely relate to your feelings of conflict and heartache, because I shared very similar ones. You know, I'm a very proactive person. I'm going to put the fires out before they get big. I don't like things lingering. That's just my mentality. You know, as you termed it, a fixer, and make sure everybody's good, right? Everybody's good. And oftentimes you worry about everyone else being good, and the last person you worry about is yourself being good. Through the entire process with TJ, both leading up to, you know, him and Talbot being born, and then also post-surgery. I mean, he went through an open heart surgery at 2 days old. Then he came back and got an open heart surgery at 5 months old. Then he came back and got an open heart surgery at 2 years old. So, I mean, it was a long journey. My number one concern all of that time, and whether this is right or wrong, I don't know, was like my own personal needs had to come last. Right. And that was hard for me, because the way I was wired for my entire life is, you know, chasing being a professional athlete and chasing going to college and trying to earn a scholarship and make the team, right? Like every step of the way was a competition. And no one's interest came before my own, right? There is a selfish component to high achievement. There is a selfish component to, I have these goals and I'm not going to let anything get in the way of them. Any person, but now all of a sudden you're married, and all of a sudden you have kids, and all of a sudden you view the world a little bit differently. So it was a little bit of a different mindset for me, where now my workout meant a little less if it meant I had to be in the hospital with TJ, or everything got reorganized. And that was hard for me, right? It was hard for me to not just fix it and go back to square one. So, you know, it was be there to support your wife. Make sure that if anyone's having a quote unquote good day or a strong day, whether you are or not, you have to perceive it. It needs to be perceived that you are. If you fall apart, then everything's going to fall apart. When in reality, it was my wife who kept everyone together. But in my mind, that was my attempt, right? I had 2 other kids that needed our love. They couldn't have mom and dad sitting on the couch feeling sorry for themselves all day because of the hand that we were dealt. Like, they needed to go live a normal life. We needed to take Tate to, you know, Gymboree class and whatever it was as we were getting ready for the twins to be born. Like, we needed to put on a good face to give him a great quality of life, right? He couldn't be punished, and we couldn't sit on the couch and feel sorry for ourselves all day, even though we could have, and no one probably would have blamed us. So there's these realization moments where, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's hard. You can't do anything about it. But then reality hits. And like, I always try to pride myself on, whether I like it or not, reality is reality. And you can either choose to let it crush you, or you can choose to try to move forward and make the best of it. And there was no perfect solution with our situation, of course, obviously in yours too, but like we have no choice but to move forward. We have no choice but to make the lives of those around us better, and their lives will be better the more active we are, the more engaged we are. And sometimes that's compartmentalizing. Sometimes that's lying to yourself that everything's fine. I'm sure at times we did all of it. And I don't think there's a perfect answer. Being helpless is hard, but you had other responsibilities. You had 4 other kids. You had a wife. I had 2 other kids. I had a wife. Life moves on, whether you like it or not. And sometimes that's a real heavy dose of humble pie and reality that you have to either learn to accept or it's going to crush you.
I agree, man. Thank you for sharing that perspective. That's a big one for us men. And thank you for sharing the strategies. I had Mike Tyson's longtime mentor and coach on the podcast not too long ago. And he's like, it's not really a well-known secret, but Mike Tyson would cry and throw up before every fight. He's like, but when he'd get out there, man, that was all set aside, right? He was just like a very emotional person, and winning to him meant a lot. And he also was a nervous person, but but once he walked in that ring, it was game time, right? It was kind of like exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So as we kind of move on to the last part of the show, I want to share something with you that unfortunately, my son, who's 14, he has FOMO right now. He's not feeling good. He was actually supposed to join me on this podcast. A few months ago, he and I flew to Dallas and we interviewed Steve Weatherford together at his house, and he got a big kick out of that. But here's the funny thing. My son's been playing football ever since he was in 3rd grade. So for 5 years, he's just going into his freshman year. From inception, he's had the number 88. So he was like really pumped to come on and talk.
Love that.
He was going to wear his jersey and everything.
Oh man.
But he is like, knock on wood, I hope he doesn't have COVID. He's feeling absolutely terrible. He's downstairs sleeping. Yeah. But I have a couple questions that he was dying to ask you. You cool?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So
hope he's feeling better.
Yeah, I know, right? He's so pumped, man. But here's his questions for you. And we can answer these in a lightning round. When you were my age at 14, what were some things that kept you focused?
It's a good question. So I'll tell you the turning point for me, where I really, for the first time, had like a clear vision of what my goals were and what I wanted to achieve. Growing up as a kid, I wanted to play high school football for my dad. Like I was the water boy, I was the ball boy, then I was a freshman. And like my goal was like, one day I'm going to be a varsity football player on Friday night, wear these jerseys that I've been watching these kids play since the day I was born. And like, I'm going to be the dude now that I used to look up to, the senior running back, the quarterback, whoever it was that my dad would coach. Like those were the kids we looked up to, right? So like that was always my goal. And I never thought anything past that. When I was a rising sophomore, so I was probably 14, 15, give or take. I don't remember how old I was when I was summer going into my sophomore year, however old you are then. I got an offer from the University of Miami. My dad took us down, me and my older brother. We went down and did a football camp down in Miami for a week. Best kids throughout the country. It was 5 days. We slept in the dorms. We ate in the cafeteria. You practiced 2-3 times a day. Like it was a real camp. And after we left, they pulled aside my parents and me and my brother, and they offered us both a scholarship. And I think driving home, I'll never forget, we drove from there to Orlando and went to Disney World for like a quick little vacation while we were in Florida. And I remember vividly sitting there, and for the first time, it became clear, like, you can make something larger than high school football, which at the time was everything in our lives. Like you can take this to the next level if you do this right. Right. So I had never played a down of varsity football up until this point, but like it clicked that there's going to be a lot of work. There's going to be sacrifice. There's going to be things that you would rather be doing, but you have to do X, Y, and Z because this is out there and this is just one school, you know. And then as those offers started coming in, like it was very clear to me at that age, like that's what I was going to do. I was going to be a great high school football player. I was going to win a state championship, and I was going to go play college football. And then from there, whatever happened. So like every decision I made in high school always was kind of wrapped in that framework, right? You know, I remember vividly my senior year, all my friends were going on spring break and I was running on the track and field team. So I was training and lifting, and that was like my off-season conditioning program, so to speak, on the track team. And my dad didn't let me go with my friends to spring break until after my track meet. So I remember one morning I'm at the weight room and me and my dad are the only people there. The school's out of session and I'm working out in the weight room and training, and all my friends are on spring break. The next day is the track meet. It gets rained out. So I stayed home from spring break for 3 days for a rained out track meet. The point of my story is all these decisions about what I'd rather be doing, but what I needed to do, I could always rationalize that because there was always this, it was a longer term goal, right? It was these colleges are coming to recruit me. I always was fearful that I wasn't good enough. And if I miss this workout, it's going to set me back this season. If I miss this training session, I'm not going to make the team. I'm not going to make the starting lineup. I'm not going to, whatever it was along the way, that always motivated me. Like that from the time I was young, that's just a way I've always been wired. Like I was never good enough. There was always something more I could do. And if it meant missing out on spring break, or that meant missing out on going out with my friends, or if that meant missing out on doing something I'd rather be doing, I was good with that, because that was my singular goal of my life, was to achieve those things.
I love that. So it's really the focus of long-term success versus short-term potential comfort, right?
Which is hard today.
It's very hard.
Which is so hard, because short-term, we live in a world of instant gratification.
Yes.
Right? Like we want instant feedback. We want instant approval. We want instant adoration. It wasn't quite as bad when I was in school. Growing up, we didn't have social, we didn't have social media. We weren't, none of that existed, but it's still hard for a high school kid, to keep that train of thought, especially in today's world. So I don't envy these kids growing up today. There's a lot of distraction that are very justified. I want to be a high school kid. And I would say, great. But then if you don't reach if your goal is to be getting to this school or get into this college or get this SAT or this sport, whatever it is, if you don't make it because you weren't willing to do these things along the way, that's on you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that advice, man. I love the long-term success vision versus short-term comfort, and focused on the long game, right? No pun intended. I just got 2 more questions that he had for you, and we can do these lightning round.
Yeah, go for it.
This one I think is really meaningful, and I would love your take on this. What kind of friends did you hang out with that were a positive influence, and how did you stay out of the bad crowd? That was his question.
That's a great question as well. He's got a good question. He's got a future in this. What's funny? My friends that I associated with in high school, especially, right? That's kind of a critical time in all these young kids' lives and decision-making. And now life's a little more real, right? Like you make a bad decision in elementary school, you call a kid a name, you get in trouble with the principal. The consequences are relatively minor. But now in high school, you're 18 years old, you do something wrong at a party, you associate with the wrong person, you act inappropriately towards whatever. These are lifelong now consequences potentially, especially in today's society, right? So who you associate, right? I'm a big believer is like you're the average of the 5 closest people, or whatever that saying is. I believe that. What was funny about the kids that I hung out with in high school and guys that I still talk to today, and we're on text chains and we argue about politics and we argue about sports teams, and like we still keep in touch to this day. They were not like football guys. Some of them were, but like they weren't football guys. They weren't like. I was friends with a vast group of people. Some guys I played sports with, some guys I played basketball with, some guys I did football, some guys I did no sports with. Like it was a mixed bag. And like the guys that and still to this day, the people that I enjoy being around are people who want what's best for you but it has nothing to do with what's best for them. Right? Like to me, those are the people you want to be around. And whether that's in you're 15 in high school or you're 37 years old now as an adult, like just be around people that truly that have your best interest at heart. And they're never going to do anything to either, they don't want to bring you up because it's in their best interest. They don't want to bring you down because it's in their best interest. They just want you to be you. You enjoy each other. You compliment each other. You're supportive of one another, but there's nothing in it for anyone. And that, I guess, would be like the best way that I would put it. And I think so often now we see people associate with certain people just because of what they could get out of it. I think we see people associate closely with others because you're in close proximity to maybe bring them down. put them in bad situations, encourage them to make bad decisions. Yeah. There's no, yeah, man, go to that party. That's fine. Like, who cares? Don't listen to what your dad said. Because maybe they're struggling with something. So it's a lot easier to now, misery breeds company. Now, all of a sudden they drag you down and now it's, I'm not the only one making bad decisions. Look, Johnny did the same thing. Right. So I think there's a little element of that too. So like, if someone has your best interest at heart, they're never going to put you in a bad spot. They're never going to lead you astray. And they have not, there's nothing in it for them. There's no, underlying, whatever I'm trying to say. I'm a big believer in that. And at different ages that looks differently, but I think that underlying concept stays true.
Not only is that great advice for youth, but that's great advice for adults. We need to remember that stuff too, man. So I love that advice. Last and final question is this: if you could go back to being my age, which he's 14, what would you do, if anything, different?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I don't want to sit here and say I would do everything the same because I was perfect. I will say I'm talking kind of out of both sides of my mouth right now because I just got done saying how like singular minded focus was, important to me. And I always knew what I wanted to achieve. But I do think I've been guilty, whether I was 14 or 34, of maybe not stopping and smelling the roses every once in a while. My wife kind of says that to me a lot, like, just enjoy it. Like, enjoy it now. Like, the way I've always been wired, it was like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing?
Yep.
And it suited me very well professionally, right? Like, that mindset is a mindset that is very, very good in the field that I was in. It's not the greatest mindset to just be a normal human, right? And just like function and be content, right? So that's something that I recognize. Like, that's something that I am aware of, so when I was a 14-year-old kid, just, I was in a rush. I was so tired of college. For example, I'll give you a story. Like, I was so tired of college recruiters calling me. And again, it sounds ridiculous. It sounds so stupid to like sit here and people are like, well, it must be nice, right? You could pick your college. But like, again, put myself in the shoes of a 14-year-old who was at a carnival on a Wednesday night, but I needed to be home at 6:00 because coach whoever was going to call our house and I needed to be home to answer the phone. So I'm racing home, and then I would get home and I'd talk to the coach and I'd be like, man, I missed it. And even though that was my ultimate goal and I loved it, like it wore on me. But at the time, I look back now and I'm like, enjoy it. Like, enjoy having that freedom, enjoy having those options, enjoy being with your friends, enjoy not having the stresses of life, and you're not paying mortgages and you're not dealing with the health of your children, and relationships are more simple. I mean, you might have a high school girlfriend or something, but it's definitely not marriage and the complications of that. So like, just enjoy being 14. So if I could talk to myself at the time, I'd be like, dude, just the rest of that stuff's going to come. It doesn't have to come tomorrow. It's not the end of the world. But at the time, it felt like the end of the world. It felt like the most impressing thing in my life was win a state championship, be the best player, win this, get a scholarship. And I look back and I'm like, it probably would have happened anyway. And along the way, you like don't enjoy the journey. You don't enjoy how cool it was to have Bobby Bowden come recruit you. And you don't enjoy because you're like, I'm not going to Florida State. Why would he come? Like, just take a deep breath and just enjoy the moment. So I think that would probably be the advice that I would give my younger self is like, don't be thinking so much about moving forward that you forget where you are.
That's incredible advice, especially for him. I can't wait to share this with him because, he's one of those players, man. He's very competitive, and he's hard on himself. He usually plays the entire game. They have him on offense and defense. And, he's one of those kids. I'm like, hey man, like that was awesome. And he's very humble. Right. And he doesn't celebrate when he comes off the field or anything. Right. He's just on to like the next thing I got to do, which is great. I think it's a blessing, but sometimes I'm like, hey man, like enjoy this moment for a second. Right. Yeah.
It's real. I get it. Yeah. It'll suit him well though, long-term.
Yeah, definitely.
It'll suit him well long-term if you can just harness it in the right ways, because it could also be very exhausting.
I agree. I'd rather him be that way than dragging him everywhere. Right. So
listen, my core philosophies of what I want out of my own kids and also the kids I coach. I want kids with great attitudes who are great teammates, who are fiercely, fiercely competitive. I want you to be mad when we lose. I want you to be mad when the guy scores a basket on you. I want you to be whatever it is. Like, I just I want you to, when that game comes, I want you to be a great, humble teammate, supportive teammate, a good sportsman. We're not bat flipping. We're not celebrating. We're not doing, we're not doing all that. But when you get on the field, I want you to be a killer.
Yeah.
That to me is the model. We can teach all the other stuff, how to catch, how to throw, how to swing a bat, how to handle a stick, whatever it is. You can't teach being a killer competitively.
Yeah.
And I believe in my whole heart, if you have those traits, it doesn't have to be sports.
Yeah.
You will have a good life because you will find that path that you're calling because you'll accept nothing less.
Dang, man. Dude, I have loved this podcast. I've loved this episode. In the words of Bill Bowerman, no one can coach desire, right?
No,
So you can't do that. Teach everything else, but not the desire part. But man,
you either care or you don't.
That's right.
And I don't have a lot of patience for people who don't care.
Me neither. Me neither, man. Greg, this has been awesome, man. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you back, man. This has been a lot of fun. I want to make sure that any guy who, I mean, obviously a lot of our guys probably know who you are, but if they want to follow you on social media, find out more about your podcast, find out more where they can get more information, things that you're doing, where's the best place?
Yeah, I mean, they can follow us on social at Greg Olsen 88. They can find our podcast, Youth Inc., which covers a lot of what we talked about, youth sports and the dynamic between coaches and parents and youth athletes and best practices and, all that for anyone, like us who's raising kids that are playing youth sports. It is a weird world. It is a complicated world. It's equally frustrating and exhausting as much as it is like exhilarating and amazing. So it could be all of those things and a lot of those things at the same exact time. So we built out the Youth Inc. platform as kind of a, one size kind of attack on what does this landscape look like? How is it changing? What are the good? What's the bad? And so you can find that at Youth Inc. Also on, social, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that stuff. And can follow us, wherever you get your pods. You can find Youth Inc. And we've had some cool, we're just in our first, we don't have 1,000 episodes like you. I think we have like 15. So we're just kind of starting this thing. But I appreciate you having me on and allowing us to kind of share a little bit of our journey and a little of our story. So thank you.
You bet. Back at you. Well, guys, not to worry. You don't have to look far. We'll have it all in the show notes for you. All you have to do is go to thedadedge.com/381 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/381. Greg, thank you so much, man. This was awesome.
This was great. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Gentlemen, go out, live legendary. Take care.